Good morning. Welcome to Unity of Chautauqua. I'm Reverend Barbara Williams and am delighted on this beginning of the Advent season to welcome you to this experience of a positive, practical, spiritual path. And so we're going to begin by singing our welcome song.
We come together in this moment. We bind our hearts and minds, for we all form a tapestry woven from one life, one creation, undivided, all unique expressions of God. We come together now in one accord. We come together in this moment. We bind our hearts and minds, for we all form a tapestry woven from one life, one creation, undivided, all unique expressions of God. We come together now in one accord.
So let's just take a moment now and honor the fact that Advent represents that coming of the light. When the church fathers selected December 25th to represent the birth of Jesus, they were also selecting an idea that had gone generations before in many different cultures. And it was the idea that at that point of darkness, at that very point of the winter solstice, that the light came back into the world. And so when we sing our Christmas songs and we see the Christmas lights, all of those are to bring us back. And one song kept going through my mind this week, and it was Emmanuel. Oh, come, Emmanuel. And I started thinking about that. And the word Emmanuel means God with us. So for me, that was the sacredness of the God within us being birthed into the light. So would you join me in prayer? So we pray to this presence of love and light in our world. We acknowledge that we at times have been at dark places where clarity is lost and doubt dwells. We acknowledge that as well, not only for ourselves, but for people we know and for our country, that there are sometimes uncertain times, not knowing what tomorrow will bring and maybe leaving us feeling vulnerable. But it is at this moment that we can choose openness and to remember that darkness is only a detour, never a destination. And it cannot contain the power of our love. So in the freshness of this sacred season, we focus on living as the light of God's love. We commit to retraining our wandering minds moving our focus from fear to love. We widen our hearts so we may welcome love's presence within, share it with others, and affirm that love is at work in all of existence. And so we go forth embracing a hope filled with wisdom as we shine forth a radiance of God's transforming light. And so when we say this in the presence of love and light and in all the holy names of God, amen. And so just a reminder, if this is the first time you have joined us, that we are doing the 5 Invitations, a book, an amazing book, actually, that is just, even as I prepare to speak to you, it's just been transforming me to prepare and to read this in depth and understand it and apply it to my life. And I call the author Frank O because I can never say his last name. But if you want to go visit our previous and follow us along, we are doing this the first Sunday of every month, and we're posted on YouTube and Facebook. And you can get more information if you go to our website, unitychq.org, and you can sign up for our emails, which also will include the notes from every Sunday we do. So just welcome to this process, and just a little invitation about what's coming. We have our first Sunday, we worked on Don't Wait, and we're going to do the second part of that this Sunday. And then we're going to move to the next invitation, which is Welcome Everything, Push Nothing Away, and then bring your whole self to the experience. Find a place of rest in the middle of things. And then finally, before we go back to Chautauqua in person in the summer, we will cultivate Don't Know Mind. So now I'm going to turn it over to our musician, Janine, as we begin this next process of don't waiting in our lives.
You know, Barbara, one of the things you said in the prayer that really stood out to me was darkness is a detour, not a destination. I love that. That was very potent. Thank you. Okay, so the song is On a Clear Day. On a clear day, rise and look around you, and you'll see who you are. On a clear day, how it will astound you that the glow of your being outshines every star you feel part of, every mountain, sea, and shore. You can hear from far and near a world you never heard before. And on a clear day, on that clear day, outshines every star you are part of, every mountain, sea, and shore. You can hear from far and near a world you never heard before. And on a clear day, on that clear day, you can see forever and ever and ever more.
Oh, thank you, Janine. That song always brings some tears to my eyes. When I think of those words, I think of how this whole spiritual path has been part of getting that clearer vision in my life, and that as I practice the spiritual principles that we share, I see clearer. And seeing clearly isn't a negative thing, it's actually that I see more love, and I see more light, and I see more possibilities in the world. Um, and that's a wonderful thing. So this is the second, we're looking at Don't Wait of the 5 invitations, and that's about discovering what death can teach us about living more fully. And we have this line from Mary Oliver, the poet, and I keep goes in my head, and it's like, tell me, what is your plan to do with your one wild and precious life? So that's our invitation through this whole series is, what are we going to do? What it has real meaning? And I'd like to just read this. And I read this to you from the book on our last talk, but I'd like to repeat it because it was so powerful. We cannot be truly alive without some awareness of death. Death is not waiting for us at the end of a long road. Death is always with us. It is the marrow of every passing moment. She is a sacred teacher, helping us to discover what matters most. And that's the part that stuck with me. And the good news is that we don't have to wait until the end of our lives to realize the wisdom that death is offering us. And so last time we talked about the fact that that don't wait is a pathway to fulfillment and an antidote to regret. And we talked about regrets and how to get past them, and to know the impermanence of life makes it so sacred, which then came to me this story of my husband and my father-in-law. And my father-in-law was recovering from pneumonia, and he'd really been sick. He was 87 years old, but it seemed like he was on the road to recovery, and we were visiting him in a rehab center. And all of a sudden, I had this feeling I had to go tell him I loved him. Now we've hugged, and he's just been playful with me our whole marriage together. And even before that, when I first met him, he was so welcoming. And so I held his hand, his face in my hands, and said, and I just felt like this heart connection. And I said, I love you. And he said it back. And then I kind of went like this to my husband and said, tell him you love him. And he says, we don't say that to each other. Okay. But he did go up and he said it. And then the next day he visited alone because I was picking someone up from the airport. And he told his father upon leaving the visit, he said, I love you. On his way home, his father died. And at the memorial, my husband said the last words that his father heard was, I love you. After all the years that they had never said those words, that it was the last. And my husband at the memorial said, I'm going to tell everyone that. And there wasn't a dry, because the room was packed with family and friends. And my husband and I did the memorial together, and people were weeping as he told the story. And so that's the invitation. The invitation is so powerful. What haven't we done that will shift everything of this one precious, this one wild and precious life? So we're going to take the second part of Don't Wait, and that is discovering the what hope and forgiveness, why they are critical parts of not waiting, how they will play this role in freeing us not to wait. So I want to read the definition from our book, The 5 Invitations About Hope. And he calls it the maturation of hope. Hope is a subtle, sometimes unconscious attitude of heart and mind that is an essential resource in this human life. It is the ingredient that supplies the motivation for us to get up in the morning and look forward to the possibilities of a new day. It is an anticipation of the future that is good. Desmond Tutu once said, "Hope is being able to see there is light despite all the darkness." Again, the celebration of Advent as we head towards the darkest night of the year. And perhaps in some ways we're seeing that, right? I'm seeing that, feeling that about our country sometimes, and situations, and even some of my aging, the process of aging, it feels sometimes dark. And yet there's always that possibility, as we said, it's just a detour, the darkness, not a destination. So wise hope, he says, doesn't arise from the outside. This maturation of hope doesn't arise. Rather, it is an abiding state of being, a hidden wellspring within us. So the usual kind of hope that many of us probably grew up with was this idea, it's almost like wishful thinking. It's driven by our preference for something different than what we're experiencing right now. And it's more based on expectation, that rather than living and embracing what's happening, we're hoping for a different outcome. And of course, that's kind of a random thing, isn't it? Sometimes that kind of hope is dashed, and then we become a cynic. So let me read his this, and I might read it twice because I have sat with this definition. It's such an enlightened idea for me about what the book says is the hope that we want to nurture. And this is the hope. Mature hope requires both a clear intention and a simultaneously letting go. Listen to that. A clear intention. It's not that you give up an intention, just say, oh, well, whatever happens. A clear intention. But why the letting go? Because this hope is not dependent on outcome. In fact, this hope is, wait for it, tied to uncertainty, because we never know what is going to happen next. The hope is in the potential for our awakened response, not in things turning out a particular way. Holding an intention and yet letting go, and allowing that questioning mind to hold a space for that intention that may not show up in the way that we thought. But what we really are holding is for an awakened response. So I need to share another story with you. This one was a hard one for me that pushed me towards from the old version of hope, which was an expectation that things would happen in a certain way, to having this awakening that there was a surrender I could do that would produce a result that was beyond any that I could imagine. So I'm a new minister in a church right out of ministerial school. Now, I'd worked for a church before, um, and I'm the new kid on the block. And so I want to relate to people that have been there a while. And there were two women that had been there, one on the board and one on the staff. And shortly after I was there, this gentleman came to our church and they just adored him. And he had expressed a desire that he would like to teach classes and that he had all these things to offer. So I had to check that out. And as I checked this out and went to his previous place he'd been in, I found some things that were disturbing to me. That he had kind of been very destructive towards the minister at that church and just was rumored and did rumors and things like that. And so now I'm not knowing, here are these two people that I care about, and yet they're really promoting. And he was just charming with different people. But what started happening in church is that some of my chaplains came and said, you know, that he's making fun of unity, making fun of what you say on Sunday. We're disturbed about it. We don't know what to do. Oh boy, I'm new. And of course, my typical way of dealing with things is to want to please people. It is a survival instinct that was part of my growing up. My mom was demanding and I was pleasing. So, of course, I start along that path, but there's no good answer. Because if I please them, then I discount my belief in what my principles are in unity. And I allow someone to be part of the church and be a leader in the church that I felt was out of integrity. I struggled with this as they pressured me more and more. And not only did they pressure, but they finally gave me an ultimatum, these two people, and they said, if you don't do this, it will split the church. A lot of people like him, and he has something new to offer, and you're just stuck in old unity ideas. Well, of course, like any lesson that really has a big impact on you, this one had a really big impact because I had to reevaluate how I was approaching it. And it was the old rock and a hard place. It's when you have that opportunity to really grow spiritually. I got a prayer partner, a minister who had long retired, had married my husband and I started praying and talking to a lot of ministers that I'm part of a group of ministers in unity, and many of them had the same experience and had a lot of wisdom. And after a time of prayer and something shifted in me. And that's my intention changed. It changed from wanting to please them and retain these people that were a big part of church. And according to them, they were meeting with a lot of people on the outside and convincing them that I was wrong. So there was a possibility, really, that the church would split. And through prayer, I got this place that my intention was to hold unity and truth and peace. Now, this is not a simple process. This was not like a day. This was take months to do this. But at one point, it finally came on me, and I felt this incredible peace. And I went to these two women, and I said, let's bring it to the congregation. Let's be totally clear with the congregation, and let's get their opinion. And I felt so grounded in love at this point through my prayers and in intention, and in the second part, he says about mature hope, surrendering. I surrendered to the outcome. I no longer had to, quote, keep the church together, not let people leave. I surrendered to the fact that I might need to leave. Here I am, out of school, less than 2 years into. And I was considering, okay, this may not be my place. But there was such a peace. And instead of, after I invited them into this, instead they left the church, them, this gentleman, and a couple of their friends, but not 75 people, which they said were all these friends that were going to leave. It was just a few people. They were not the problem. I want you to hear that. They were not the problem. Me not coming to a place of enlightened and in integrity and clear about who I am and in total surrender to an awakened place. I was what was blocking the good for this. Hard lesson, but probably the most profound and the most significant one that made me really clear about who I was as a minister and what I held dear. I've had other tests like that. I will tell you this, it didn't quite take me as long to do it when other people came up with different ideas that felt like not in integrity with what we taught. But it was like I had to grow up into a mature hope. Instead of the expectation to make everything peaceful, it was to make everything about love. So he goes on to say that this is an orientation of the heart, this version of hope. And it is trust in the goodness that underlies every problem. So there actually was, in fact, our church, after that point, after I got clear and started living in a different kind of hope, we started growing more. That block of energy that I was holding and was not allowing this higher vision to manifest in the church started manifesting. So he goes on to say that, like in illness, I thought this was interesting. Mature hope helps us come to a place of wholeness, even if a cure is unavailable. That was true of the church. There was an illness going on within me, within the situation. And I didn't see a cure available, but there was always wholeness available. And then the cure showed up. So when we embrace both an intent and a surrender, a letting go, that's when possibility comes into our lives. That's when we're directed to what this don't wait is open to. And the thing that blocked my getting to this more mature hope in our congregation and myself was that I was into my own egoic. This version of my original hope was just kind of an expectation. Of course, I would just explain to these people what unity was about and they would be on board. It was going to be simple, not me changing, but just explaining, right? And so part of me was grasping at trying to make things right, or I was pushing away some of the situations I was uneasy and I would avoid. And all of these are from our woundedness. It's from my childhood. It's from all of our childhoods. We were told to either get along or rebel, whichever one we picked. Some of my family rebelled, and some of them, and I was the get alonger. But all of it was a call to a higher place of surrendering to a good that's underlying things that I wasn't even aware that was available to move into that flow. So cultivating this more mature hope is remembering that we are continuing on this journey. And that's what the blessing to me of aging is. I'm continuing to awaken and evolve. Um, and I believe that our world right now, as we're looking at our world, there's a question about whether we've stepped backward, don't you think? And I've had some sadness. I've stepped back in that hope, in more the egoic hope of, oh my goodness, democracy's being challenged, women's rights are being challenged, our climate. And it's not that these things aren't happening, but this egoic hope of wanting to control it is not where the answer lies. It's not going to undo that. And so before I can jump to that next, to that awakened response, I have to first deal with my feelings. And I had to deal with them back with the situation in the church. I had to do a lot of forgiveness of some of the part I played in it. And I had to look at my fear and realize my fear of being a brand new person in a church and wanting to get along. That's pretty normal. That's pretty normal. And so when we get into that fear, when we take what's going in the outside, whether it's in our country, a big or picture of the world or the climate, or even in our little families, our small communities, the first thing is to be so compassionate with ourselves. Because the fear, if we dig deeper and we investigate the fear, what are we going to find? And I think we'll always find out of fear is a love for our country, a love for a more stable situation in our lives, um, grieving for those that are impacted by what's going on right now in our world. And so feel that compassion for it. Feel compassion for ourselves and the feelings that as we respond to what's going on, and compassion for each other. Because the way that we're pushing against, the way I did was with the church thing, was either pushing against, avoiding, or trying to force things to happen. It's not working. Only a mature hope is working, one based on an intention of living in love and a surrender of understanding that there's something bigger going on. We don't see the whole picture, but we want to contribute our part by not pushing against what is happening, but loving it into wholeness. So Jesus said some things about this. He said this: when you see these things, do not cower in fear, for your transformation is drawing near. Whoa. See, even back in those times, the same thing. His disciples, the people around him, could feel the fear that his ministry was creating. And he's saying this is the edge of transformation, of rebirth. So Advent teaches us that too, that we're the edge of darkness, that the night of darkness, of the birth of the Christ, not only several thousand years ago, but the birth of Christ that continues to get rebirthed in us, is calling forth more light. But there's always darkness before that next jump happens. Because it's the very darkness that makes us realize how much we love the light. And he goes on to say, do not be caught off guard by the fear-filled tides of history, he warns, but be mindful, praying for strength, that you may escape the fears that roil the earth and may stand with God. Again, the birth, Emmanuel, calling the birth of God within us. Oh, come, Oh, come is the song of our hearts. Oh, come, that God beside us, within us, around us. So we're asked not to give up on each other, to know that we belong to each other. And so why is this so important? Well, there's some practical reasons. As we embrace this mature hope of an awakened consciousness, it's part of our immune system. It blesses us, it connects us to others. We no longer have to shut the door. We see every person that enters our life, even the disgruntled ones. And some of the ones that come up, and I have some neighbors that have done this, have brought conspiracy theories to me that trigger that fear, like, oh no, this is what's hurting the country, and I go right there. And one of those people that did that recently, his wife, that was this light of the world, just passed. With a long struggle, she passed. And every time I saw her, she's just light, and he's in such hurt now. And it took me a little while to do the work because of the things he said, to open my heart. And not only did she die, but now he needs a quadruple bypass. And he's going into the hospital right after her death. And when I see him walking the dog that he bought for her, he bought her a new little puppy because he was hoping that would bring her back. All I can feel is love. I'm no longer afraid of what he believes. I can't afford to be. I just can't. If I have made the intention to be that light in the world, if that's my intention, I've got to keep going back. And so that takes us to the next part of this. Don't wait. First is to mature our hope, to allow a wise hope to join us. And of course, this is the hard one. And he calls it the heart of the matter, which is forgiveness, right? And he says, hope inspires the good to reveal itself. Forgiveness opens the way. Okay, breathe that in. Forgiveness opens the way. And you probably heard lots of talks I have over the year. I've given them over on forgiveness. And guess what? It's a lifetime thing. It's actually a state of consciousness. And this is what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said. Forgiveness is not an occasional act. It is a constant attitude. That if we've lived long enough, we've realized that it's always that. So here's what Marianne Williams says in Illuminata about it. Until we've seen someone's darkness, we really don't know who that person is. Until we've forgiven someone's darkness, we really don't know what love is. If we are to create the beloved community, favorite words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., a world that works for all, that's part of Unity's overall vision statement, a world that works for all. We must stay on this path. Forgiveness is the path to love. And that doesn't mean that we're throwing away accountability or that we don't stay away from people that are hurtful. But there are so many opportunities for this, because forgiveness has the power to connect, as it does with my neighbors. I've decided the ones that are saying the largest conspiracy theories are the ones that are my spiritual teachers. Not easy. And I do go home for a while first and think about it. This is not an instant. I wish I could say that I immediately go into my heart and open it wide to them and not feel the pushback, the fear. I do. And that's okay. I'm just being human. But I also have a part of me that's calling me to touch into the divinity of my love. So our author goes on and says, whoa, and this is so true, forgiveness is a fierce practice. It takes real strength, a willingness to be with what is difficult. It asks us to face our demons. It requires absolute honesty. We must be willing to see things as they are, bearing witness to painful acts that happen to us or the harm we may have done to others. But eventually we get to this statement: I don't want this to interfere with my capacity to love. Jesus said, forgive 70 times 7. You've probably heard it loads of times. Maybe you didn't know that the Hebrews used numerology, and 7 meant to completion. So when he says 7 times 7, 70 times 7, he's saying, as long as it takes. Or as Dr. Martin Luther said, a continually process within us, an attitude of consciousness. So don't wait. Don't wait. There is hope. There is forgiveness. There is a walk of love. And so I'm going to ask Janine now to come back and lead us into our meditation.
For holding back the light you give to me, for every feeling that I've denied, for all of it I could have turned to tears, but turned inside. For every heart I could not open to, and all the dreams I never dared, for all the time I turned my back on truth when I was scared. I forgive myself and everyone else. Sweet streams wash me down, pour your grace all over me, lift me up to a higher ground where I can see. For blaming you when life got hard to live, for all the joy I could not see, for everyone whom I could not forgive or let go free. I forgive myself. Sweet streams wash me down, pour your grace all over me, lift me up to a higher ground where I can see. Now I know what I've been told. to a higher ground where I can see.
So we take these moments and we allow those words that Janine sang to resonate, being lifted, the part that we've held back, just allowing that forgiveness, knowing that we are just human. And that's what connects us and loves us with each other, honoring this road, the sadness and the joy that we connect together. And so this Advent, we allow that knowing that light is coming into the world in ways within us and around us, that we are holding a candle to the darkness. So let's use our imagination now and imagine that you are in a large open field on a night with no moon. The darkness feels endless. You are holding a candle, but you have no way of lighting it. And so you let go in this moment any fear and allow your mind to get quiet and settle into the unknown. The darkness is not an enemy. You are safe. For love, for God, Emmanuel, God with us, is being birthed in us and around us and through us. And a light appears in the distance, moving toward you. And you feel a knowing that you can open to this light and allow it to surround you like a soft blanket, enfolding you. And as you allow this light to hold you, your candle is now reflecting this light with a flame. And you look around you and you see that there are hundreds of people in the dark with candles not lit. And so imagine now that one of your beloved is in that group and you see them and you catch their eye. And you bring your candle over and you light theirs. And then you watch them as they light someone near them, and that person lights, and all of a sudden light begins filling this area around them. And you turn in another direction and you notice someone that maybe you felt a block to feeling love and compassion. And you bring your candle over and you stand for a moment. And it might be a difficult moment in which you allow yourself to hold their gaze, heart open, and you light their candle. And around them, they then light theirs, and another candle and another candle. And so you move back into the center and into the silence, allowing yourself to watch what one candle can change the world in the silence. And you feel that light radiating from all those candles that surround you, radiating back to you as your heart opens even more fully to accept this love. A candle does not lose any of its power and brilliance by lighting another candle. Its ability to share its brilliance is limited only by the length of time it can stay lit. When Jesus said, "You are the light of the world," he did so with the knowledge that we have an unlimited source of light, the inner Christ. Like a burning candle, each one of us can touch untold numbers of others with our unique light. We can keep touching and touching many other people with our love and our light without diminishing our own source in any way. For this is the hope of our world. And so it is. Amen and amen.
Wash me down, pour your grace all over me, lift me up to a higher ground where I can see.
So thank you, Janine. It's just a delight to be with all of you. Some of you will be online and know this Advent season, there's all this possibility for an awakened response, for a wise, for a mature hope, and for every encounter being part of our spiritual journey. And so this is our time when we have a love blessing for our offering. And I just want to tell you some so wonderful things. We are in the process of selecting the minister board, and Janine and myself, we are selecting these people who will be so blessed. They're ministers that are working, putting a lot of love and time in their churches, in their ministries. And we're going to bring them to Chautauqua so they have this week to just be filled with visions and possibilities of healing and hope in the world. And so I want to just tell you that your gift is what makes that possible. that provides them with housing and a gate pass and all the things that we require to have that on site for those 9 weeks in the summer. And so if you would say with me our offertory blessing, and you can also go to our website. If you're on our emails, there's a place you can, on our website, unitychq.org, there's a place that you can donate as well as sign up for emails, and there's a place in our emails. And so we affirm this for ourselves, for the generosity that moves in and through us, and for them, for those that are coming. We hold this space for a generous gift, saying, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And I am grateful. Feel that as we sing together.
I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful for all that I have. I am so blessed. I am so blessed. I am so grateful. I am so blessed.
So we are going to say our unity prayer of protection, and I have our earth here. So just imagine that we're holding this because that unity prayer of protection is living on the moon, brought by Buzz Aldrin all those years ago, and was written originally to protect our troops in World War II. And so we hold this together for our earth, for ourselves, for our families, that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, Emmanuel is, and all is well. And so it is. And there's a picture of unity of that little Episcopal chapel on the grounds, for which unity in Chautauqua, it's actually Chautauqua, we are grateful, we're thankful, we're blessed. And thank you for being here.